What a privilege it is that we as citizens of this great nation can come to our nation's capital, talk to our elected officials on their level, looking at their eyes because they are no different than us. Only in America that we, the citizens, have the power to make such an impact on our society, have freedom of speech, have amazing freedoms that our founding fathers have etched in the Constitution and our Bill of Rights, so we can do exactly what we are doing today. You know, we prepare for months on end leading to this conference, paying attention to every little detail, thinking about what speakers we're going to have here, because this is very important. Because this is our time, one time a year, where we, as the largest national security grassroots organization, you know, we are the only grassroots organization focused on national security in the United States. We are the NRA of national security, and we are growing by the day. And we thought, what better time to hold a national security conference in Washington, D.C. than the week of 9/11. So our elected officials will never forget how important protecting the country is and preserving our national security. Because we can be the most prosperous nation on earth. We can have this, we can have that. But as September 11th, 2001 proved to the world, that a handful of 19 crazy radicals brought America down to its knees. We stopped. Our air traffic control came to a screeching halt. Our skies were empty. We were mourning. We were, as a nation, in mourning, collectively, united. It didn't matter what color we were, what language we spoke, what background we came from, how many years we've been in America, whether we were first generation or third generation Americans. Because our lives changed that day and turned upside down. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and we were talking about how we used to be able to walk to the airport, to the gate, to welcome our loved ones as they stepped from the plane, carrying flowers and welcoming them. Or how you had just pick up your bag and go straight. There wasn't a security line when you're flying somewhere, and just go straight to your plane. Things have changed so much. My own children do not remember a day where we could walk to the airport like this. It's a new world. And it's a new world that we must fight to preserve, because America and the West is facing a die-hard enemy that is dedicated to our destruction. And I want to make very clear, as we talk in this conference, that we are talking about radical Muslims. There are plenty of moderate, wonderful Muslims throughout the world, but their voices are not heard. They are not the ones who are doing the killing. And we want to empower and give voice to those who are standing up against the radicals, like Raheel Raza, that you're going to hear from her this morning. An honorable woman, a Muslim woman, who stands up and says, no to Sharia law. You're not going to oppress me as a woman. I immigrated to the West, and I love what the West has to offer. Those are the type of reformists we want to empower. Which leads me to the most important subject that I'm going to open up with this morning, which is a subject that's on the mind of many Americans, and many in the West, but particularly in America. And that is the subject that is driving the election this year. National security and the refugees coming to the United States. Our immigration, tightening our borders, protecting that what we have until we can figure out what is going on, who's coming to our country, and whether or not they are coming here to assimilate and to follow the American dream, or they are coming here to siphon off of our system and bring down our nation, not to mention the terrorists who want to do us harm. This is a very important issue. And I thought about all the wonderful immigrants that came here to this place, to America. America, the dream. People from all over the world aspired to make it over here, me included. And I thought, I'm going to use my own example as somebody who has first-hand experience, who's gone through the process of immigration, of coming here as a legal immigrant. I came here by marriage. I married an American citizen, and that's how I ended up in this country. So I feel I can shed a light about the immigration issue different than somebody who never experienced this process. You see, America is and will always remain a beacon of light to the world. People want to immigrate to America if they have the chance, not to any other country in the world if they have a choice. America is it. The immigrants that came here from the beginning of time, whether they came on the TWA or whether they came on the Mayflower, whether they were refugees like the Holocaust refugees who came here to seek refuge from religious persecution, or immigrants who wanted to come here seeking a better life. Everybody wanted the dream. Everybody wanted to be a part of this great nation, me included. The early immigrants that came here, including me, who came here 27 years ago, when I came here, I wanted so much to be an American. As a matter of fact, I wanted so much to be an American because I used to watch television as I was a teenager sitting in a bomb shelter, underground in a 7x10 room, 8 feet underground. And we would watch television on a black and white battery, on a black and white television operated on a car battery because we didn't have electricity. For those of you who are not familiar with my background, who just heard about us and about ACT on the conference, I'm a war survivor in Lebanon who lived for 7 years of my life underground from the age of 10 till the age of 17, hiding, trying to survive from the attacks of radical Islamists who were trying to destroy us. And television was my window to America because I would watch American programming and I would watch The Love Boat and Dallas and clips of American news. And I was always impressed how leaders talked to their citizens, how they valued their people. I was always impressed at the opportunity of America, at the freedom in America, at the possibilities in America. Somehow I ended up with an American flag that I put under my pillow, one of those little small flags, and I cannot recall how I got that flag. But I remember that flag being with me in my bomb shelter. I was around 13, 14 years old at the time. And I remember looking at that American flag thinking, one day I'm going to make it out of this hellhole and make it to America. In order for me to make it to America, I wanted so badly to learn English. So I would watch television programming on our TV, and I would read subtitles on the bottom so I can self-teach myself English. And I would watch Dallas, and if two people looked into each other's eyes and one of them said maybe, I knew that maybe meant whatever was written on the bottom in the subtitles. And I used to write it with an ink pen on my arm. And because we barely had water to drink, let alone to shower, I built a huge vocabulary on my arm. That's how I learned English. I never learned English at school. Because I wanted to have the opportunity that if I ever meet an American, I want to be able to communicate with them, with him, her, in a way where I can start the process of somehow ending up in America. I knew I needed to speak the language of those whom I admired, I wanted to be a part of. That's how I learned English. I could tell you at the age of 19 years old why I wanted to come to America. At the 19 years old, as a Lebanese, I can tell you about America's exceptionalism. What are the possibilities in America? I remember sitting with my father watching the Apollo going up to the moon and the American flag being planted and me saying, wow, look at these people. It's amazing. They're so smart. They're so special. They can do amazing things. I want to be a part of this movement. I want to be a part of this incredible, charismatic, spiritual awakening of the world, awakening of the individual, awakening of the spirit that in many countries in the world it is oppressed, it is crushed, it is walked on. I wanted to be a part of America. I ended up moving because I spoke English. I ended up moving to Israel, becoming a news anchor for World News Tonight because I did speak English, even though I read the news in Arabic. But I was able to communicate with the American company that hired me because we had an English division for the news. That's how I met my American war correspondent who worked with me, ended up getting married, and that's how I came to America. And when I came to the United States in 1989, I wanted so much to be a part of this country. Like most immigrants, all immigrants, the original immigrants that came here, who wanted to be a part of America. I didn't even speak Arabic with my own 2 children because I wanted them to speak English and English only. I wanted them to be as Americanized as possible, as early as possible. They were Americans and nothing else. I did the exact same thing that many, if not all, the immigrants that came here did before me. Even though they spoke a different language at home, they spoke English with their children because it was their opportunity to not only practice their language and improve their English, because their kids in most times spoke better than them, but they wanted to make sure that the children understood that they are a part of America, not of China, not of Lebanon, not of Vietnam, not of Italy. They were a part of America, to contribute, to be, to grow, to contribute to this great nation. Because they knew that the opportunities here did not exist anywhere else. And they came here. And like them, I did not teach my children one word of Arabic. I told them, when you grow up, you can choose whatever language you want to speak when you represent your country. You can take French, you can take Spanish, you can take German, Japanese, Chinese, whatever you wanted. But as an American, you'll have that choice when you grow up. Plus, also as an Arabic woman, I did not want my kids, my girls, if they ever go back to Lebanon, to be told, as is customary, when a daughter is of a teenager of marriage age and she grows up and somebody comes to visit you and they offer you and you offer coffee, it's the girl's duty to offer the coffee. It's kind of showing her off to the public because she's now on the marriage market. And the thank you, instead of saying thank you to a girl, they say, Allah yustur alayki. May Allah cover your shame, meaning with a husband. And I was never gonna have my daughters visit Lebanon ever one day and even understand if somebody ever said to them, Allah yustur alayki bi'aris. May Allah cover your shame with a husband. And the shame being the fact that they were women or girls, because the fact that you exist as a woman is shameful. That's the Middle East. That's the Islamic culture. That's how they think. That's the unspoken stuff they don't tell you about in the West, because everybody wants to keep appearances and don't talk about these things. When I had to take the exam, when I came to America, I had a child. My first daughter was born in Israel. I came here with a baby. And when we applied to get my green card, I was already pregnant with my second child. And when I applied to get my green card, I had to go through medical exams, blood tests, test for tuberculosis, test for hepatitis, test for this, test for that. And by the way, I had to pay out of my own pocket to provide all these exams and pay for all these tests to prove that I'm not bringing any disease with me to the country. I had to study a 2-inch thick book from the Daughters of the American Revolution, about the history of America, the Constitution of the United States, our judicial system, everything that had to do with America and what makes America great. And I had to pass a written and an oral exam in order for me to become an American. No easy pass. And I gladly paid for it, and I gladly went through it, and I counted the days to become an American. And I became an American in 1994. What a blessed year that was. I became an American, and I cried as I pledged allegiance to the United States of America, that I will forsake anything other than her, any nation, anything that I left behind, and I will pledge my loyalty only to the United States, to serve her, to protect her, to do whatever I have to do as a citizen of this country. Those are the type of immigrants that used to come to this country with this passion. And since I came to the United States, I have worked so hard to be a part of this great nation, to attain the American dream. Because what this country provides is incredible. I created 186 jobs since I have been in this country, because I wanted to be so much a part of this country. I wanted to pay my taxes. I wanted to participate in our political process. I wanted so much to become a congresswoman. And my husband would say to me, why do you want to be a member of Congress? I said, can you imagine being able to be a nobody, raised in a bomb shelter, and immigrating to America, yet you have the chance to participate in government? It didn't matter what title I had next to my name, Whether I was Lourdes, this or that, it didn't matter how fancy schmancy my father was or what his title was. It didn't matter how much money I had in the bank. As an American, you can come here with nothing and end up with a lot of things because you can do so much as an individual. This is so especially and exceptionally American. It is amazing. So, I wanted to share with you the drive of immigrants like me who came to this country, because I'm speaking about the drive that most Americans experienced. This is why they came here. Unfortunately, today, we are dealing with a group of people who are coming to our country who do not share our values. Now, some of them may assimilate and will, not even may, some of them will assimilate. Some of them may continue to be great contributors to our society. But unfortunately, what we are seeing right now, we are seeing a lot of people who are coming to our country who do not share our values, who are not coming here to build and be a part of America and contribute to America, but to suck off the system of America because they feel entitled to it, because this is easy street. They are coming here because this is what they want. Not to mention the terrorism aspect. This is what the West is dealing with today. This is why talking about this issue and the decisions that we make today are very important, because all you have to do is look at Europe and what Europe has done. It is important to know who's coming into our country and why they're coming here, who they are, what they believe, because the consequences of not understanding this very important point will lead to our demise, just like it led to the demise of Europe. Just look at Europe today. Europe has become Eurabia. Germany is falling apart. France is falling apart. Belgium, Switzerland. You look at these nations. Look what's happening with these nations. So we want to make sure we do not make the mistake that Europe has made, because there's no turning back. Once you open up the floodgates, there is no turning back. Now, a lot of refugees are coming into the country, and a lot of people are talking about refugees and worried about refugees and thinking, oh my gosh, who is coming into this country and why? And here's how the process worked, because everybody's concerned about it. You know, the Chicago Council on Global Affairs released a poll in August, and they say that only 36% of the American voter support refugees coming into the United States. Only 36%. So don't buy what you're watching on the media. Oh, we want to bring as many refugees as possible. No, we don't. The majority of the American public does not, despite what the media is telling you. Now, how does the process work? The United Nations decides what refugees come to the United States. The United Nations Commission on Refugees decides what refugees come to the United States, not America. They work with the State Department in bringing these refugees in. The State Department then works with 9 federal contractors. 6 out of the 9 are religious charities. And these religious charities are not passing the bucket on Sunday morning or Saturday morning in the pews to collect the $1 billion price tag it costs to settle these refugees, and we're not even talking welfare. No, they are getting it from the Treasury Department, from your pocket and my pocket, in order to resettle them. So, who are these federal contractors? The federal contractors are Church World Service, Ethiopian Community Development Council, Episcopal Migration Ministries, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, International Rescue Committee, U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrations, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, World Relief Corporation. So these 6 out of the 9 are religious organizations, Christians and Jews. These federal contractors work with 350 subcontractors, and the 350 subcontractors then work to resettle the refugees in 92 cities across America. And they resettle them within 100 miles radius from wherever the office of the contractor is located. So if there is a contractor in the city of Richmond, those refugees are resettled within a 100-mile radius of Richmond, not just in the city of Richmond. There's a lot of money on the line. The contractor gets a one-time allocation fee of $1,125 from federal funds per refugee, or about $5,600 for family, that is used to finance the resettlement logistics. For example, the money is used to buy, the money needs to be spent in about 30 days, by the way, and it buys everything from bed clocks to lamps to beds to furniture to food, refrigerators, etc., to furnish the apartment where these refugees are going to be resettled. By the time the individual, this refugee, reaches the airport of whatever city they are being resettled, they are literally a taxi right away to a warm meal in their new home, paid for by our tax dollars. In addition to the cost of $1,125 per person, the settling contractor gets to keep $1,000 in their pocket on top of that to spend as they wish on themselves. So we're looking at $2,126 per head for these refugees to come to America. The contractor works with the refugee for 6 months, and after the 6 months, these refugees are then, their files closed, and the process begins to work to bring their extended family. So for any refugee that comes here, and we spend all this money bringing this refugee here, after 6 months, the process starts, and then we start resettling their family members, and the whole thing starts again. It is such a cash cow. Thank you, Tom. It is such a cash cow. Sorry, I lost half my speech. So they had to go print it for me, and I said, I don't care, go find it, print it, do whatever you have to do. So they did. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to put these here, and I'm going to go on. So it is such a cash cow, and everybody is jumping on the refugee bandwagon because of the mega millions of dollars that is being spent on and given to these organizations to resettle the refugees. It is a money-making machine. So when your pastors or your friends tell you, oh, but we need to settle this, the Lutherans and the Catholic bishops and the this and the that, and you know, and by the way, the World Relief Corporation is actually an evangelical organization, so the evangelicals are not off the hook either. Everybody's making money on the deal. So when they try to guilt you into, oh, but what about the compassion? What about, don't you want to help the refugees? Jesus said, help the downtrodden. Tell them, yes. And Jesus at the same time said, be as kind as dove and as wise as serpents. Because over the life of a refugee, over the 5 years it costs to resettle a refugee in this country of $65,000, for that money we can resettle 500 refugees in their own region, staying in their own community, speaking the same language around people who understand them, who share their culture, instead of bringing them to a culture shock here. That's how we can spend the money. We are not saying do not help refugees. We want to help the downtrodden. This is what makes America great. We have an earthquake in Iran. Remember a few years ago, America was the first country to offer help to Iran. We are generous people. We always help. We always want to give. We always want to support those who are in need. But we're not going to let people walk all over us because we are being fools, and we are led by greed, not by compassion. Greed cloaked in compassion. That's what these religious institutions are selling you. Now, here's an example of how much one of these organizations have made. And I'm going to give you homework. You can do your own homework on the others. But here's one that I chose to show you how much these religious charities are getting and what is riding on the line for them and why they are pushing to bring refugees into the country. And I'm going to use the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. The Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service is 95% funded by your money, by your tax dollars. We looked at their latest 990 forms that they submitted. The latest form they submitted in August 2015 that was available. And on page 9, it states that their total revenue for that year, for 1 year, was $59,862,898. The total federal grants, money they got from our tax dollars, were $55,341,275. So let me get this straight. So they brought in 59 million, 55 million was from us. They also received from your money $1,817,755 for loan for a service fee. So to say they are getting 95% of their funding from our tax dollars would be a very accurate piece of information. For more details on how these charities are getting their money, the federal grant, your money, that they're doing good with, you can go to usaspending.gov, and type in Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services and see their hundreds of millions of dollars in grants and contracts over the last 8 years to bring refugees to the country. But why should we be concerned about these refugees we are bringing in? And while everybody is thinking terrorism, at this point I'm going to talk about the cultural impact, the societal impact of these refugees coming here. Now, we've heard from Europe about the rape and sexual assaults that these refugees are perpetrating against women. This is the top news from Europe right now. We all heard about what happened in Germany on New Year's Eve. Remember, over 1,200 cases of rape and sexual assault that the German government even tried to cover up because they did not want people to know what the refugees are doing? Actually, just this past Friday night, there were some holiday in Germany, and there are like some celebration, some festival where they celebrate in different pubs. 4 women were sexually assaulted, and the German authorities are saying this is just the tip of the iceberg because we do not know what happened in other pubs as well by the refugees. So why should we be worried here in the United States about the refugees? And right now, I'm going to just go over some cases of rape and sexual assault that we have experienced right here in the United States by refugees that we already brought in America. I'm not talking terrorism, I'm talking sexual rape and assault. Lowell, Massachusetts, a 13-year-old girl was twice groped at a public pool by a 22-year-old man freshly imported into the community from Syria as a refugee. Twin Falls, Idaho, a 5-year-old girl was raped by 3 Iraqi and Sudanese boys who were imported less than 2 years prior. Leesburg, Virginia, a West African refugee attempted to rape a college female by the dumpster at her college complex. Roanoke, Virginia, 4 refugees were indicted for plotting to kidnap and hold local rich women for ransom. Utah, a Burmese Muslim in the United States for 1 month, brutally murdered a 7-year-old Christian girl. El Cajon, California, a Muslim man performed an honor killing on his wife and blamed it on Islamophobia. Mapleton, North Dakota, a Somali refugee beat and raped a North Dakota woman while chanting Allahu Akbar. This is the type of difference of values. This is the pattern of disrespect that these refugees are showing to our women and children in our society. This is their detesting our Western values and everything we hold dear. And here I'm going to use an example about the Burmese we are importing to our country. Now, a lot of people are thinking Syrian refugees. A lot of people are not paying attention to the Burmese, for example. But I'm going to talk about the Burmese refugees, not Syrians, to show you the difference between the value and the cultural system of these refugees that they are coming from. I mentioned the case in Salt Lake City where the Muslim Burmese brutally raped and killed a 70-year-old girl. The examiner said she died in excruciating pain because of the rape. Shame on the mainstream media who never uttered a word about it, only in Utah. And the reason why I bring this Burmese example is because last week, a Burmese refugee in Australia was sentenced to jail for raping, viciously raping a 10-year-old little boy. The convicted Muslim man said it was culturally acceptable in his society to rape children where he came from in Burma. They do not look at it as rape, and we see this pattern in using children all over the Middle East, all over Islamic societies. I only have 15 minutes left. Oh my gosh. Okay, they gave me the time. As a matter of fact, the reason why I use the example about Australia is because we see this pattern of using children for sexual pleasure all across the Islamic world worldwide. Child marriages, child rape, child prostitution, especially the sexual abuse of little girls. These perpetrators, when they are confronted, they say, well, it is not rape, it is sanctioned in my culture and in my religion. So where does this belief come from? Prophet Muhammad, whom Muslims consider the perfect man, al-insan al-kamil in Arabic. And they all want to emulate. Prophet Muhammad married a girl at the age of 6 and consummated the marriage at the age of 9. Having sex with 9-year-olds is not considered sin or rape or anything bad in Islamic religion or culture. This is why we see this rising all over the Middle East, and now it is rising all over the United States and Western nations where these Muslims immigrate. We have now imported and seeded over 15,000 Burmese in the United States throughout America in the last 10 years. You do not know what is lurking in your city, in your community, and what's happening and who's walking down the street or living near you. Child brides are rising all over the West due to Islamic refugees and migration. Countries reporting child brides are Germany, 100 cases this year alone, and only in the city of Berlin. Switzerland, 119 cases have now been reported. That's a little over 1 every 3 days, and nearly 22% involved girls under 16 years old. In the UK, there are reportedly 100,000 marriages that are unrecognized under UK law, and the women in them have no rights. They are known as Sharia marriages, of which 2/3 were polygamous. Canada, Netherlands, Denmark, and Australia are reporting the same thing. This is what the West is importing to its midst. This is a value system that is completely opposed and different than anything we stand for and hold dear. Refugee cities have also become hubs for foreign illnesses. They are bringing with them illnesses that we have already eradicated in the United States, such as tuberculosis, for example. Active tuberculosis right now is exploding. Colorado has 16 cases. I know I have close friends in Colorado in this room. Ohio, 11 cases. Vermont, 35 cases. Wisconsin, 117 cases. Florida, 11 cases. Idaho, 7. Indiana, 4. Kentucky, 9. And North Dakota, 4. And by the way, the majority of these cases are drug resistant, which means this is active tuberculosis that is resistant to drugs. It cost us, the taxpayers, you and me, $150,000 to treat one patient, and it takes 6 to 8 months while they are walking around and spreading the disease. Refugee resettlements is not about humanitarianism, but it's about supplying cheap labor to industries looking to boost their bottom line, to drive that's what's driving most refugees coming to the United States. It's the food processing plant, meat packing, manufacturing, and the hotel industry that have discovered that you can enjoy the cheap labor at the expense of the US taxpayer and at the expense of the cultural and societal upheaval communities are experiencing right now all throughout America. Now, most refugees are on welfare of some sort, which makes anyone who employs them, and listen to me carefully here, eligible for federal work opportunity tax credit. An employer has greater incentive to hire a refugee than to hire an American who is struggling, but doesn't want to be on welfare, including food stamps, because there's a lot of Americans who still have the integrity to say, no, I'm going to work, I'm not going to collect welfare, I'm going to go find a job, and I'm going to do it on my own, even if I have to go work in construction. A refugee's salary is subsidized by the US taxpayer, while an average American's job isn't. So it is not that Americans do not want to do the work. There's a lot of Americans who want to do the work, they don't care. They are starving. They want to contribute. They want to do something. They want to attain the American dream. They want to go after the American dream. They don't care if they work 2 shifts or 3 shifts in order for them to make money. But employers in these cheap, like Chobani yogurt, next time you buy Chobani yogurts, I want you to remember that Chobani yogurts is one of the largest employers of these refugees and driver. So next time Chobani yogurt hires a refugee is because they are getting the work opportunity tax credit. So the government, our tax dollars, is paying the salary of that refugee while the federal government does not pay the salary of an American. So that's why organizations and companies like Chobani are hiring, and they are the drivers behind these refugees. Not because Americans cannot find work or they do not want to work. It is because the refugees are taking their jobs away from them. I want you all, I urge you all to do your research on your refugee overloaded city or any city you live in where they are expecting refugees to come. I want you to research the campaign contributions to your elected officials, right down to the mayor, whatever, your city council level, and I want you to find out what business connections they have to these businesses. Because a lot of time, these big businesses are giving campaign contributions to whoever running for office because they know that once the city council and the mayor are elected, then they owe them to pay the favor back and to pass the laws to bring these refugees back into the country. And now let's talk about terrorism threat and ISIS infiltrating the refugee population. We know already that ISIS said, they already came out with a video saying that they have planted 4,000 ISIS refugees and operatives, ISIS operatives and recruiters within the refugee population in Europe. This is the same pool of refugees that the UN is picking from the refugee population to bring to the United States. Remember, the UN decides what refugees come to America. The UN is under the influence of the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. This is why you see a lot of Muslim refugees coming to the United States. ISIS already infiltrated the refugee population in Europe. So when we bring refugees to the United States, we have no idea what their loyalty is, whether they are working with ISIS, whether there are plants in here, whether they are here to prepare attacks on 9/11. This is the week of 9/11. Are they already here planning to carry on attacks in the United States? If God forbid something happens, this 9/11, I want you to remember this speech and about ISIS already coming into the United States disguised as refugees. And while I'm talking about refugees and their loyalty to ISIS, Iranian refugee Adnan Fazali, who died for ISIS, was on welfare in the United States. He was resettled in Maine, and the leftist media was so up in arms, not because he was on welfare, but because the governor revealed this information to the public, basically insulting or, not respecting the Islamic terrorist right in death. They were upset not because he was on welfare while fighting for ISIS, but because the governor told the people. Now, why would they be upset like that? Why would the agencies be so upset? The agencies, the federal contractors who are resettling the refugees. Because that means it's going to create resistance and people like us who are very concerned about this issue to say, hey, not in my community. Here is the percentage of Syrian Muslims admitted to the United States by the Obama administration. This year, it's 99%. Total Syrian admitted, $10,177, again, in this fiscal year. Sunni Muslims were 9,988. Shiite Muslims were 20. Muslims, in general, who I did not identify as Shia or Sunni, were 90. Total of all Muslims admitted, 10,098 people. Now, the reason why it is important right now to talk to your elected officials tomorrow, and I'm going to get on that even more tomorrow, more later on in my speech, is because Obama is going to speak before the United Nations September 19th and 20th this month. You know, the United Nations comes for their annual meeting up in New York. And Obama, this 19th and 20th, is holding a summit on migration, and he wants to be able to go before the United Nations and tell them, America, I am pledging to bring 200,000 refugees to America in the next fiscal year, 2017, starting this October. 200,000 refugees. This is why right now, Congress has to decide in the next 4 weeks whether they pass Obama's proposal. You are the barrier. You are the firewall. Your appointment with your elected official is the firewall tomorrow afternoon to stop that. But I jumped ahead of myself right here. I just want to continue a little bit more information because I believe this is very important. Some Syrians will end up coming here through other ways. There is a conference in February in which Beth Ferris, a Georgetown University professor and a humanitarian refugee policy advisor to the United Nations Secretary General, said, and I quote, "There are alternative safe pathways that could inflate the number of fleeing Syrians entering America to 200,000 people. And here's how they want to do it. Possibilities include giving scholarships and extending the ability of Syrian Americans to sponsor relatives beyond their immediate family members to include aunts, uncles, and grandparents." They're getting creative to speed up the path, to speed up the way of getting refugees into the country. In addition, some 8,000 non-refugees from Syria who are already in the United States, both legally and illegally, have been allowed to remain under a program called Temporary Protected Status. The Department of Homeland Security recently renewed that status for another year. Now, this is something we have to stop. The buck stops here. The buck stops with us. We need to protect our country. Most experts agree that more than 20% of Muslims are radicals. It is practically impossible to identify this group from the 75 or 80% who are not radicals. Impossible. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say 20% of Chinese people are infected with a disease that is fatal on contact. Fatal on contact. Would we just continue to allow Chinese to enter America rather than be called China-phobic? Or would we take the sensible approach of halting Chinese entering the country until we can figure out some way to know who was the carrier of the disease that is fatal on contact, such as suicide bombers or terrorists when it comes to the refugee population? And we would want to check also the Chinese people who are already in the country to make sure they are not carriers of the disease. That would be the sensible thing to do to protect the country and protect Americans. That's why Trump's approach makes sense. He cares about protecting Americans more than about being called names. Let's start being sensible and stop this political correctness that's going to kill us. The buck stops with this Congress, with the Republican Congress. Right now, the people who are going to approve the refugees coming are not Obama or Hillary. You don't have to worry about that. The people who are going to stop them or allow them to come are the Republican Congress that you're going to be meeting with and talking with tomorrow. I know you're meeting with all members, Democrats and Republicans. But you need to tell your representative in Washington, starting now, because they are back to work tomorrow, Wednesday, to withhold funding for the U.S. Refugee Admission Program for fiscal year 2017, which begins in 4 weeks on October 1st, 2016. Let these supposed nonprofit organizations who are religious charities, let them fund it out of their own pocket if they are so driven to bring refugees into the country. Congress is going to start debating the refugee issues starting tomorrow. How timely it is that we are here on Tuesday and tomorrow, Wednesday, after they come back from their long 1-month recess, to start debating the refugee issue and how exactly they're going to spend your money, how much they're going to throw of your money on the refugees, funding them both through U.S. Senate Department and the Health and Human Services. Forget Obama, forget George Soros, forget the contractors. This Republican Congress should be your target one focus in the next few weeks. Republicans control the Congress. That means they control the appropriation committees, in which in turn will make the decision on how many refugees will come to your town in fiscal year 2017. by how much money they appropriate for the federal agencies, Department of State, and Health and Human Services. And don't forget Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who, as you can see, are two of the most powerful people, and they play the most powerful role in your town getting refugees, because they both have majority, second in seniority in the appropriation committees. Now, I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to wrap. Before I start questions and answers, I want to remind you how important it is for you to meet with your elected officials tomorrow. We have appointments scheduled with you. This is not about being Democrat and Republican. This is not about being left or right. This is about protecting and preserving America and our freedoms and our values, so our children can enjoy living in a country that is free. This is not about painting with a broad brush and saying don't bring this and don't bring that. This is about preserving our values and screening, doing proper vetting, or as Donald Trump would like to call it, extreme vetting as to who we are bringing into the country. And I want to tell people who are watching us live right now, either on C-SPAN or live on the internet, I want to tell you, join us. Go to actforamerica.org and get involved. If you are concerned about the refugee issue, no matter where you live in the country, join our Refugee Resettlement Working Group. We have now groups working all over the country to protect their communities. This is our chance to stop the floodgates, because when you open the floodgates, you will not be able to close them back. The enemy will be within. Now is your time. Go to actforamerica.org and join us. Become a member. Join us as a financial supporter. We have a lot of work to do, and we need your support. No matter where you are watching us right now, we need you involved and we need you engaged. Thank you for being here today. May God bless you, and I open it for questions.